Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boys, Jack and Dave here, and this man needs no introduction. We have Shawnee from Spurs Talk Show. Sean, it's good to have you back on the podcast. Where, like I kind of said to our last guest, it's like we sort of have you trapped in an elevator with us, for around an hour just to chat Spurs. And once we sort of reach, our heart's content on what we want to talk about, then we'll let you out of it. So how are you keeping today?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to be back. I feel like I haven't been on the channel for a little while now, a hot minute. So it's good to be back. And yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about whatever topics I'm not going to spoil the surprise. I think we all know what the topic will be, but I'm not going to spoil it. So we'll get into it when we get into it.
I imagine they're going to be some of Dave's favorite topics. Maybe a certain guy with a luscious hairline, maybe a certain back line that he likes to talk about as well. Dave, how are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good. To be honest with you, I wish I had a lot more energy and, I was a lot better in myself to be able to give a lot more on these topics. I mean, it's sort of, they're real topics that I specialize in. But, look, we're here to have a good discussion on them. Let's get into them, Jacko.
I think we're just going to get started with the breaking news on Mickey van de Ven, and then we'll talk about a player that I certainly have, a lot to say about with a certain redemption arc. But good to see this movement on the center backs, I think, Sean. But I feel like the future still kind of sort of remains unclear. Do you trust Spurs to go after two sort of solid center backs? Because I know you and I'm not sure. I'm assuming maybe you're on the Tapsoba train. I'm not sure what train you're on when it comes to the center backs that you want to bring in. But if we were to bring in Van de Ven, do you trust Spurs to still bring in like a Tapsoba as well, or somebody just as good?
I don't see the reason why we can't get both done. I think getting both done is a massive statement of intent. Personally, I think if you get Van de Ven and Tapsoba, then what that offers you is in Van de Ven, a left-sided centre-back and a left-back.
Yes.
Like a full-back. I think he can play equally well as a full-back and can compete with Udogie. Then you've got Ben Davies, who can also be that utility player of left back and left-sided centre back. That allows you to have easier conversations, easy decisions around one of or both of Reguilon and Sessegnon, which allows you to recuperate some of the money. And then in Tapsoba, you have a left-sided centre back and you have a right-sided centre back who can step in as and when Romero happens to be injured or goes away, and Argentina always suspended or whatever else. And I think it allows you to have far easier conversations. I think that this idea that you have to pick one or the other, it reeks of just typical Tottenham, and I don't see the argument for it. Our centre-back situation is so bleak, so weak. And this idea that maybe we've got that, Clement Longley on a fishing rod right now, we're kind of waiting to pull the trigger on that deal. I really hope that is a last chance saloon, a last port of call. And I also would rather Eric Dyer not hanging around as well. So to answer your question directly, Jack, I feel like there needs to be some direction for this window to be thought of as an absolute monster and one of the best that Tottenham have had in recent years. Then I think that it needs to have two really good centre-backs. Now, would I tolerate a scenario where we were to go and get Tapsoba and Tosin? I'd still be fairly okay with that. Would I be okay with Tapsoba? Oh, sorry. Would I be okay with Van de Ven and Tosin? Yeah, I actually do. I'm okay with that as well. And of course, there's other variables that will come in and affect whether or not we can get both of them. But I don't, on paper, see any reason why we can't get both Tapsoba and Van de Ven. I think both of them can play in their number one spot. They have versatility, utility. One of them's a right footer. The other one's a left footer. The other one can play on the left. The other one can come in on the right. So for me, I think that Tottenham fans should really hope that there is a changing of the guard with some decision making and that Tottenham can actually go and get both of these deals done, because it doesn't need to be an either or. It should be a both, in my opinion.
I agree completely. I think choosing between one or the other, you can do that when it's a situation where you're sort of fine, like maybe it's the right wing position or maybe the creative midfield position like we did with Madison, right? I don't know if we needed to sign technically two creative midfielders. We sort of had the opportunity to sign more or less kind of the perfect one kind of in James Madison. And I think we've kind of done that. But with the center back, it's like sort of major surgery, but with major surgery, it's almost like multiple surgeries that we need to make when it comes to the outgoings as well, when it comes to what we need to then bring in when you get rid of those players, being, I think, of Ben Davies and Eric Dyer, Sanchez, Tanganga, Rodon, etc. But it feels like if it were just Van de Ven and then like a Tosin, I actually would be a little underwhelmed, because Van de Ven, for me, as much as I really do want to get behind it, he's really only been on people's radar for a year. I think he was just, he's fresh off kind of his rookie season, basically, in the Bundesliga. And he absolutely shown to be basically one of Wolfsburg's best players. But also at the same time, like, you're sort of like, is it too much too soon for him? Like, and
maybe
it will be too much too soon if he's coming in to just play what you were saying, Sean, earlier, kind of that left back, left-sided center back sort of role. I think if he were to come in to be basically the Ben Davies replacement, where he's kind of used in a variety of different positions, he can kind of get forward if you need him to and kind of help out in that regard. I kind of said he could be more or less the next Lewis Dunk or something like that, where he's going up and down the pitch, like but also kind of that Kyle Walker type defensive solidity as well, at left back, but he still can help out going forward. It just, I don't know. I think if it were just Van de Ven and a Tosin, I'd be left a little underwhelmed, because I just don't think Van de Ven is exactly a statement signing. And I think with major surgery to that back line, and also when we're talking about a good partner for Romero, I think we need kind of more of a proven center back. And Tapsoba has been in the Bundesliga for years, and he's been kind of developing his craft for years over there. Whereas Van de Ven is, like I said, a very talented center back, and he probably might be one of the best center backs in 5-6 years time, but just feels like it could be too much too soon for him if he's going to end up being like the starting center back partnering Romero for me.
Look, I think the reason why it's not two at the minute and it's either or is because I think Spurs are struggling to get the fee down for Tapsoba. And I did say that this was going to go on for quite some time, because someone like Tapsoba with 3 years left on his contract, he's a lot harder to get because the fee is going to be a lot more higher than what you would pay for Van de Ven. But realistically, we should be bringing in three. We should be bringing in Van de Ven, Tapsoba, and Clement Lenglet. Despite what people think of Clement Lenglet, he's better than Sanchez, better than Dyer, better than Tanganga, better than Roden. And by bringing him in along with Van de Ven and Tapsoba, it allows you to get a lot of them guys out and really strengthen that department back there, because that's been our biggest Achilles heel. Scoring goals at Tottenham has never been a problem. I like the signing of James Maddison. I think it, gives us a new dimension going forward and probably puts our attacks up there at one of the best in the league. But we've seen last season, you can still have some of the best players in the league scoring goals, but if you can't keep them out, it's a huge problem, and it becomes detrimental. That's the reason why we didn't get any European football last season. It's the reason why we keep getting knocked out of cups, because we have guys in this squad that have proven time and time again that they just cannot form a cohesive unit to keep clean sheets. And I'm not comfortable with any of them stepping in at any stage next season. For me, I think they all have to go. What it's looking like right now, though, is that it's going to be Van de Ven, and I think the club are waiting for Barcelona to sort of rip up Lenglet's contract and then sort of go for him. I think that's what you're probably going to see happen. But for me, I think, it's just show a bit of ambition. The last 3-4 years have been really hard for Spurs fans. Show some ambition and bring in the three. Bring in Van de Ven, Tapsoba, and Lenglet. We could do with them all. And Ange Postecoglou can deal with them all. And they all offer different things. You've got Tapsoba, who's very good in the air and very good on the ball. Competing in the air is something that our backline has struggled with for a number of years now. You've got Van de Ven, if you're going to play the high defensive line, he's got the speed to be able to get back and cover a lot of that defense there. And then you've got Clement Lenglet, who, for me, he adds a bit of both. He's okay in the air and he's okay on the ball. And for me, I'd feel much more confident when someone like Lenglet stepping in. If it's Tapsoba or Romero or Van de Ven, for instance, were injured or suspended, then I would others. So for me, you owe us fans. For years, we've had to put up with a shit squad. We've had to sit here and debate about shit players for years. Show some statement of intent, follow up the Maddison sign and bring in Van de Ven, Tapsoba, and Lenglet. And I don't want to hear anything about money on this. It's something that has to be done. You bring these guys in, you force the others out. It's good news that, there's people looking at Sanchez and Dyer and people like that. That's all good for us. So for me, I think just show some ambition, get 3 in here and clear 4 out.
Yeah.
Quickly, I feel like I was having this conversation earlier on a different channel. I made a lot of predictions throughout the season around the difficulty of clearing the deadwood. I think with most of European football broke, that it was going to be difficult to see how to clear the deadwood. I predicted and it looks like I was wildly inaccurate to do so, that Chelsea were going to struggle to get rid of their players. Forgive me, I don't think I saw, and I don't think most people saw the impact of Saudi Arabian money coming into the league. And I think that what that impact is having is a knock-on effect, a domino effect already. You're starting to see, teams with good players move their players on that don't necessarily need to go there. Teams with older players that want to go there. And I think that this is just a snowball effect that's just getting going. And I think what we're seeing is actually that those players that then are moved on allow space, and these clubs are finding ways to get more money in out of these situations. And I think it's leaving me with a little bit more confidence. Like, I hold my hands up. I obviously didn't see the Saudi Arabian effect happening. I don't particularly like it. That's for a different conversation. But in any event, I do think that there are scenarios going to play out now where certain teams around Europe are going to have a little bit more money than they probably thought they would have done to rebalance their own books. And I think that it might be easier to move players like Sanchez on, players like Eric Dyer. We've already seen Harry Winks going for 10 million. I don't think anybody would have thought that Tottenham could have got 10 million pound for Harry Winks a few months ago. So I think that maybe this secondary market that is starting to emerge, it's indirectly, I don't particularly like what's going on with Saudi Arabia, the money thing, but indirectly, I think it does offer the opportunity for Tottenham and other clubs maybe to move on some of their players as that snowball effect and the domino starts to kick in. So I'm with Dave. I think that if we can get 3 centre-backs in, personally for me, I'd rather have Tosin over Longley. Just that's a personal choice.
I would too. I just don't think the club will spend the money. I think Langley will be free, and I think that's why ultimately he'll end up coming in over Tosin. I do like Tosin. I think he's a very good player, especially on the ball. He can break the lines from the back line, but I just don't see the club laying out money on 3 centre-backs. I think 2 and 1 free.
And you got to make at least one signing that divides the fan base, and the Longley signing is absolutely going to be that one. And and then the rest of them should make sense. And
but do you think that there's the need for 3 left-sided centre backs if you're going to get Van der Ven, who technically is a left-sided centre back, Tosin, who is Longley, who technically is a left-sided centre back, and also Tapsoba, who, whilst being a right footer, is technically a left-sided centre back? Is that over egging the pudding? Would you be more okay if we could get 3 in? Would you be more okay with Tapsoba, Tosin, and Longley, or would you rather have Van der Ven and stick with the 3 left-sided players? Like, I'm not sure which kind of cocktail would be more beneficial.
What do you think, Dave?
Look, I hear what Sean's saying. I mean, Tosin would make sense because he could be that backup for Romero, because I think they're very similar on the ball in terms of their passing ranges and stuff like that. I think it makes sense. And I know he's got 1 year left on his contract at Fulham, but Fulham are trying very, very hard to keep this guy. That's why they added on a year extension at the time. He could have left last year, but they added on the extension, and they are trying hard to get this guy to sign a new contract. And it does make sense to see what Sean's saying. You'd have him as backup to Romero, and then you'd have Tapsoba and Langley, or Tapsoba and Van der Ven the other side. I just fear that, the fact that Tosin will cost money on top of Van der Ven and Tapsoba, I don't see it happening, because Spurs usually average about 100 million spend in the summer transfer window. So I don't really see, outlaying 3 fees on 3 defenders. It would be nice, but that's why I reckon then Langley comes into play, because he's free. We already know he's a decent option to have back there. And then if Romero gets injured, then you can just move Tapsoba across and bring in one of the left-footed centre-backs. But also, it is worth noting that Van der Ven, it's not guaranteed that he's going to come in here and play left centre-back either. For all we know, he could end up playing left-back. We don't know when it comes to that. But that's where I'm at with it, Jacko. Just quickly, it does reflect on the talent that we have, the lack of talent that we have in the backup regards. The fact that Saudi Arabia seem to be buying up half of the world, and even they have not approached any of the players that we have. That shows how shit they are.
I mean, they're trying to make the league better, Dave. They're not trying to, they're not trying to over egg the pudding, like Sean said. But in terms of this question, Shawnee, I feel like, that could be too many left-sided focused sort of players, or left-sided comfortable players. I feel like if we were to get Mickey the Flash, and credit that to Simon Yemain on Twitter, who I absolutely love, but if we were to bring him in, I think he would if it would be a really smart signing, like I said before, if he was like sort of the Ben Davies replacement, because he could play as a center back in a back four. He played the majority of his games last season in a back four as sort of the left side of the back four. And then he also, like you said, you know, he could play as a left-sided center back in a back three. He can play as well as a left back and has shown to kind of do well sort of in all those positions. And I think what's important about Van de Ven is that he's really comfortable in sort of possession in the final third. And what we need in a Postecoglou system, guys who are not going to do what Moonhead does, which is give the ball away unnecessarily, or Ben Davies give the ball away unnecessarily with certain hospital passes or just passes that go astray and go kind of a bit, a bit off, and then it leads to just all of a sudden a bit of nervousness because then you get countered. Because we always sort of say with Spurs and with Antonio Conte, why don't we just kind of keep better possession? And it's like I think a little bit of it, of course, was the tactics and how Conte was very regimented with his patterns of play, like how you're supposed to pass, where you're supposed to pass to. But at the same time, you would see sometimes just 8-yard passes, right in front of them that are just going, into the stands. And that's when you start to think like, which guys will Postecoglou, kind of get rid of that he knows just can't cut it in this high possession system. This is why I don't think Eric Dyer can stick around, because I feel like not only is he's proven he can't defend in a back four. I feel like we've kind of forgotten that when we discussed maybe keeping him around. He's shown that he can only defend in the middle of a back three, where he's pretty much just asked to do nothing and stand there and kind of just look kind of like a statue in the place. But when he's really asked to be in a back four, he's shown to be too slow, as well as kind of just not really anticipating enough. Like he never anticipates what to do, or he lets kind of balls go over his head that end up being right to a striker that's right behind him. And what we need is also a guy that's good in possession. I don't think Dyer is really good at any of those, and especially in possession, I think he's really overrated. Same thing with Ben Davies. I think Ben Davies is maybe a decent, like I said, sort of vanilla type defender that maybe is nice to have, but what we need is better now. And I think he's shown as well to be probably better in a very defensive type team, but not like a team that's actually expected to be good on the ball. And also one last thing with Eric Dyer, he occupies one of the non-homegrown spots. So absolutely get rid. Bring in the Tapsoba, bring in the Van de Ven. It would be a massive upgrade. He's not occupying any sort of homegrown sort of role. All he's occupying is this weird ambassador kind of captaincy role that I guess the fan base and the club, to be fair, have given him. And I just hope that we see him as now a guy that just needs to be upgraded on, because I understand he has some sort of attachment to the club and to a large section of the fan base, but we have to look at him as basically, on the squad sheet as a non-homegrown player that hasn't ever really done it for us over the years. So it's time to cash in and upgrade on a Van de Ven or a Tapsoba.
Yeah, you're about to awaken the beast here now, Jacko. I mean, I'd have an attachment to the club if they were paying me 85k a week and I knew I wasn't good enough to be there, and if I left, that my wages would be cut in half. I'd confess my love to the club, Look, let's be brutally honest here. Dyer, Tanganga, Sanchez, Rodon, and Ben Davies. They've been proven for multiple years. They will never, ever have a better chance of getting into that Spurs squad than they have over the last few years. And they've all proven they're not good enough technically, and they're not good enough mentally, and they're just not clued in or good enough for this level. That's it in a nutshell. They've all let us down, every single one of them. They've all been signed, they've all been brought here, and they haven't produced. And at the end of the day, this club has a decision to make. Do you want to go after this Ange Postecoglou rebuild with some intent? You get rid of them guys and you bring in 3 centre-backs. If you want to do it in slow, incremental sort of over a couple of seasons, then you keep some of them squad players around. You bring in only 1 or 2 centre-backs. And that's the difference for me. That's, you bring in 3 and clear out them. That's ambition, and you're really giving Ange Postecoglou a chance. Or if you sort of keep some of these guys around and then we get injuries or suspensions, and lo and behold, apparently, Dyer appears on the team sheet, or Sanchez. We know what's going to happen. They're going to fuck up. They're going to cost us the game. They'll cost us all momentum. They'll cost us everything. These guys are just not good enough to be here anymore. And it's about showing ambition, and it's about really sort of trying to change the perception in this football club. Do not go half-assed and do it with something like Madison and then only follow it up in a problem area half-assed. Do it properly for once. Change the narrative around this football club and actually show that we mean some business. We've got our first attacking manager that we've had at this football club in 4 years since Pochettino. Let's go after it. You know, we have to. And plus, these guys are not, they're all going to get exposed in that high line. And it's either going to be they're in possession and they give away a sloppy pass. And we all know what happens. All you got to do is pick up the ball and run at them. I mean, Dyer let you run into the 6-yard box.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Run into the crowd, into the concourse, grab a hot dog and fucking come back. You know what I mean? And then, you know, you've got other players there who just, Sanchez, he's being exposed. That's one of his biggest weaknesses. Balls in behind him. Davies, one of his biggest weaknesses, players running at him, balls in behind him. So none of them actually suit Ange Postecoglou's back line anyway. So for me, you just got to show the ambition and really show that you're really trying to change things and go after it.
Yeah. Shawnee, any final words on the center backs before we move on to one of my favorite subjects, which is a certain player's redemption arc?
No. I think I said what I wanted to say. I agree with what Dave was just saying as well. I think some of these players that we hanging around, you know, if they couldn't hack it in a back three with a low line, they're never going to hack it in a high line with a back four. There's trouble on the horizon. In an ideal world, I think we would love to see a complete reshuffle. But I think that Rome wasn't built in a day. And I was saying it all last year that unfortunately the first managerial candidate who comes in, who is the initial pivot from a pragmatic defensive line of football with a back three into a progressive style of football with a back four and a completely reshuffle, you're going to have massive, huge overlay of square pegs and round holes. Yeah. And you can't do everything all at once. So I don't think that the centre backs are just the issue. I think that we also, I know we're going to talk about other things, but I think that there's massive question marks over two of our potentially best players in our squad, that whether or not they actually fit the new Postecoglou system. I think you can make the same argument about a number 6. So I think that centre backs, midfielders, wing backs, full backs, I think that there's a huge amount of disruption. Even if they're good enough as a player, are they good enough in the new system? And certainly when you look at the centre backs, the players that we currently have, 9 out of 10 of them, or whatever it is, 5 out of 6 of them are not good enough. So I just hope that Daniel Levy and whoever else is pulling the strings can make the right decisions in that regard as quick as possible.
Not only, I feel like not only last thing from me and then from you too, Dave, but I feel like not only are most of them not good enough, but they've all shown that they can't even do it in a back four. Davies can't play in a back four. Dyer can't play in a back four. I'm not sure if Tanganga can really play in a back four. So it's all just, that as well. It's not even just their ability. I think they've shown, like, for a fact, like even under Ryan Mason, like Ryan Mason's period, I think you might have said it or Dave might have said it at one stage, sort of like a bit of a trial period for Postecoglou to look at. Like, this is, when your quality will really show, and the people that, can swim will swim, and the people that can't. And I think Dyer, Lloris, players like that all showed that they couldn't do it, in that time period. So that's the last thing for me. But yeah, Dave.
The thing is, the reason why I keep harping on about defense is because it's your most important area. It's like anything, you have to have the foundations in place. And if you keep clean sheets, Tottenham will always score goals. We've always had the players that will score you goals. And that's why I keep harping on about it. In midfield, okay, you prefer maybe a few other different options, but ideally you've got enough to see you through the season. Same up front in certain regards. But that back line, we know, okay, we've got plenty of options, but they're not good enough to carry us through a season, and they're detrimental. So that's why I say you start with that defense first, because last season, right, we weren't that far off top 4 in the end anyway. A couple of clean sheets. Yeah, exactly. A couple of clean sheets along the way. You know what I mean? You would have been in top 4. You would have been in Europe. And we statistically had our worst defense ever at Tottenham Hotspur last year. And that's where your problem lies within. That's the biggest problem. And the thing is, if they would have performed last year and they didn't concede the goals, we'd be looking at midfield. We'd be looking at other areas. But the reality is that defense is the one that's holding this football club. That's the area on the pitch that's holding this football club. And it's embarrassing.
I think that it's worth pointing out, before we move the conversation forward to the next topic, it is worth pointing out that the fullbacks that we have to ask to play fullback positions this year, if you're asking Porro to do it and you're asking Destiny Udogie to do it, if you're going to be asking them to do it, and I would imagine that we are, in no small amount of time, because we can't change everything all at once, then there's going to be massive mistakes there, which is, again, it adds more, I guess it adds more increased focus on the centre-backs. Can you cover for the inadequacies or the mistakes of the players that we have? Destiny Udogie was signed for a wing-back system and is one of the most talented wing-backs in the game, up-and-coming but can he adapt to play in a full-back system? It's a completely different position, especially with a high line. Question marks. Pedro Porro, massive question marks defensively. If Emerson Royale is out and out #1 first choice right back simply because, and we're fist pumping, but remember, right? We all love. I know he's a cult hero. We all love Emerson Royale as a cult hero. However, like, you know, there's question marks over Emerson Royale still as well. Those haven't gone away.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, I think that Tottenham fans, one thing I'm pushing a lot on the content I'm doing is I'm pushing for patience, because I think that Tottenham will start slow. I think that everywhere Ange has gone, he has taken time to get his system, get the mentality, the kind of the psychology of the strategy, you know, into the system. And I think that Tottenham fans, even if he gets Tapsoba and Van der Ven and Tosin, even if he goes and gets an Amrabat, even if we go and get someone else at the top end, even if we get all those things sorted, I still think there is going to be a need for patience, because the steepest learning curve is one where a formation is alien to you. And that is something that every player at Tottenham hasn't trained for. Every new face that's coming in has not played with these people. So there's so much change going on. Patience is going to be a virtue, I think.
Oh, 100%. I think you're absolutely spot on with that. I think, look, I've said this myself. I think the first 10 games are going to be a bit, you know, up and down. But after that, I think you start to see things iron out. But on the fullbacks, I mean, you've got Reguilon there. He is a left back, so he can play left back. He's proven that before. That's where he's playing under Jose Mourinho. Emerson, you know, he is a right back. That's what his favorite position is. Now, the difference between what you're asking them to do now compared to what you're asking them to maybe do under Conte is, under Conte, they were pushed higher up than the centre backs. So they didn't have to worry about keeping a defensive line, playing people on side. Whereas now they have to constantly, it's more defensively taxing, because they constantly have to be looking along the line, checking. And that's why it's even more important to have that talker in centre back, because a good communicator will say, look, just drop back in slightly, pull inside, you know, get out, put pressure on the ball, and speak and communicate to the other side. So having that guy...
Making the case for Eric Dyer again, Dave.
I think we need to spend 30 million on Ben Mee then. I think we need Ben Mee again. 40 million on Ben Mee. Get him in now. That's the guy that we need, because he's shown to, you know, in all seriousness, to prove Dave's point, like, he's shown to be an excellent sort of like stalwart defender, but also a commanding defender, where he organizes his back line. When they concede a corner, you see him like he's shaking everybody's kit, and he's like throwing people, you know, to the front post, throwing people to the back post. Just that sort of guy. And
Max Kilman's another guy who can do this. Does similar things as well. He's good communicator.
That's good to know.
You know?
Let me just rephrase what I was saying. What you need is a player that can actually defend and play football plus communicate.
100%.
Tanguy lovers, scream and shout, let it all out. Ange Postecoglou is a believer and an enthusiast, according to some sort of Twitter kind of, at least some reports, I guess, from kind of inside people over at Spurs. He's getting me very twisted up and emotionally twisted up with him, Sean. It's like I've gone back and forth with him multiple times. I've kind of lost count as well with how many times I've gone back and forth with him. It's like going back to a really hot ex, you know, you just kind of can't stay away. Do you feel like Postecoglou can save Ndombele's career? And if he does want him around, what sort of role is he going to give Tanguy?
Are we referencing here the tag from L'Equipe, the French daily journal, the tabloid? Listen, I when I read it, we apparently rejected a £20 million bid from a French club, and because Postecoglou wants to see what's going on. Apparently,
I saw it too.
Listen, if it's true, I would have dismissed it immediately, because I would have thought if anyone comes in and bids £20 million, you take that money and you say, and you run, and you like, thank you, sign the contract and run before they have the 14-day tear up. Like, but it comes from L'Equipe, which is, you know, like a respect. It's just the national French sporting journal, right? So it does have integrity to a degree. I think. I don't think that's wrong of me to say. And I think that maybe they're basing it on just the kind of common decency of a new manager coming in saying, no, let's wait and see. If it's a flat out rejection, then I'd see that as a little bit crazy. What I would say is I'd hope that Daniel Levy has said, I appreciate the offer, if it's true. I appreciate the offer. We're not rejecting you, but can you please allow Ange to run his eye over the player to see whether or not he fits the system? And if he does, then politely we'll decline. We're going to run with him. If he doesn't, then we'll come back and, you know, and give this some attention in a couple of weeks' time. For me, Ndombele is the ultimate divider. Is there a player there? Yes, of course there is. He's a wonderful talent. As Dave was saying backstage, he is unfortunately just someone who has no work rate. And under a Postecoglou system, you need players that are going to work for you. Like, everyone has to pull in the same direction all the time. And I just don't see.
I don't think he can be the same Tanguy that we knew from before. He can't be the same one.
It can't be the same Tanguy.
No,
but the only thing I've seen at Tanguy since he's arrived back at Tottenham is him getting out of his 4x4 and walking to the training ground. And I thought that video was in slow motion because I thought it was on like 0.5 speed or something because he wasn't really in any effort. But I mean, for me, I'd rather see the back of Tanguy. I don't think he is the right player for us. But listen, you know, if Ange wants to run his eye over it, cool. Maybe Ange could be the guy to drag the blood from the stone, but I don't see it really.
The thing is, though, right, when we're dealing with that article, like, even if it goes down to the fact that Daniel Levy's like, well, look, hold off, we need to see, you know, what Ange thinks of him. Surely then that means Ange probably has gone to him and said, well, look, let me sort of cast my eye over Ndombele, because surely as a club, as the chairman, my stance would be, well, this guy, we bought him for 60 odd million. We pay him 200K a week. We had to get a manager who's won Champions Leagues to run around an apartment block with him. You know, we've had to loan him out to Napoli. And, you know, he just hasn't shown any work rate or any sort of commitment since he's got here. And against Morecambe, he trudged off the pitch slowly and got even slower when the crowd booed him and walked straight down the tunnel. So surely as a club, you know, if I'm chairman Daniel Levy, I would want to accept that straight away. So then my thinking is then surely then Ange has gone to him and said, let me cast my eye across him first before you make a decision.
I feel like he's being probably, like you kind of said, you're right, Dave. Like, he's sort of a player that's not on the fringe in terms of like he's not like a Joe Rodon or something like that, where Ange Postecoglou was like, you know, Daniel Levy has come to him and said, like, tell me what your thoughts are on like Joe Rodon. Like, what do we do with him here? It's not that sort of thing. Tanguy Ndombele is like a huge player because he's on massive, massive wages. And so you have to look at that and sort of take that seriously. And he probably then is, you know, being asked by Daniel Levy, you know, what's your thoughts on this guy? You know, he's on massive wages at the club. We probably could get around 15 to 20 million for him. I didn't doubt that that's probably around the range that someone would be willing to throw money at. And I guess Ange Postecoglou could be the case that he's willing to give the guy a chance. And I think he's probably in the same lines as me, where you're kind of on that hopium that he can tap into something that is there, because what we've seen from Ndombele, he's not just skills and tricks and things like that. He has that through ball. He has that vision. He has that sort of like X factor where he can even just hit it from distance, or just sort of like make a decision just to turn and spin a guy like out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're leading an attack where it's a 4-on-1. It's just those sort of things that he's able to do that pretty much no player really, I feel like, does anymore. Like, I feel like players are very sort of like risk averse, if that makes any sense. He's a very, you know, like positive player with how he likes to receive the ball. He's always trying to, you know, make something happen with it. He's always trying to sort of take a risk, and ends up kind of sometimes being a bit sloppy, where if he does give it away, he's not really tracking back always super hard to try to win it back. And that's what I think has led people to sort of feel very divided on Tanguy, is that they see his unworldly ability, but then they also as well see the fact that when he does mess up and when he does not get things right, he's not working as a true teammate to try to help win it back and help, you know, make the system, you know, work around everybody else. He maybe is a guy that, like we said before, the system kind of has to work around him. And that's what needs to change, I think, in order for him to really work in this Postecoglou team. I think he has all the skills and the talent in the world to actually be a real valuable asset, because when we have Bentancur out for a while, you could consider this sort of like James Maddison, Tanguy, Basuma, type rotation in certain games. You could also consider bringing in Tanguy and Ndombele for, you know, maybe a more defensive midfielder that might be on the pitch. Let's say we play Skip or something like that. Take Skip off, put Tanguy in as kind of more of a number 8, move Maddison a bit higher up the pitch, you know, that type of thing. I just feel like he could be a valuable asset to Spurs. He has all the skill and talent in the world. In fact, I think what probably people don't speak about enough, I think, is his passing ability. I think he can thread people through, and he can just sort of all of a sudden open up a defense with sort of one move. But at the same time, he's going to need to actually not have that mentality where I feel like he feels like the system works around him, because that's when he was his best player, was when we worked around Tanguy and Højbjerg, and I think it was Sissoko won the ball back for him and then just gave it to Tanguy, and Tanguy just did his magic. But it's not really how this team is going to work under Postecoglou. And I think hopefully Tanguy realizes that, and hopefully Ange, I think, is going to try to drill that through to him, because if he is able to do that, I think we have a real sort of a talent on our hands here. That's for sure.
I agree, Jack. 100%, mate. It's
I'm
a
not
difficult
sure
one, though. It's the ongoing dilemma with this. When you have talent, what was the phrase? Talent is superseded by hard work, but only if hard work comes with talent. Something like that. Whatever. Yeah, go on. You say it.
Hard work beats talent every day of the week.
Yeah. As long as you've got talent with the hard work, right? You can't just be a hard worker but without talent. Because I can work hard, but I'm still not going to get into Tottenham's team.
Are there any other players like a Tanguy? Are there any players like a Tanguy, Dave or Sean, that like are kind of on the fringe as well, like in terms of like attitude and things like that, also kind of divided with the fan base, like a Gio Lo Celso? I don't know.
I think do you know what, mate? I've asked this question many times on my walks, and I've read every single comment, and you'll find, I'd say 25-30% of people still have some lingering hope and desire that Tanguy, whatever, it could make it. I really don't see any people have the faith in Giovanni Lo Celso anymore.
Really? I see a lot of them. I'm always fending them off, it feels like. I'm waiting for that Stop GLC account to come back.
No, well, maybe different audiences, maybe, but I see very few people have much faith or interest in. I'm not even sure what position Gio Lo Celso actually plays.
Yeah,
is he an 8? Is he a wide guy? I don't know where he plays. All I know is I remember him for being a party boy who cared more about his country than his club, and also couldn't kick the ball above knee height. And Jack will always remember that one.
That was my thing with Gio too, is that like versus Tanguy, is that I think Tanguy is actually an unbelievable player in ability, whereas with Gio, I don't even know what Gio actually is. But yeah. Sorry, Dave.
The thing is with Tanguy, he's actually shown periods in a Spurs jersey of how good he could be, and that's why people have this conversation around him more than they do Giovanni Lo Celso, more than they do Winks, Dyer, even fringe players in the squad. The reason why I think this is one that divides is because we have seen how good he can be. Like, let's be realistic about it. And this is what frustrates many people. The debate is never, ever, ever about the talent, ever, when it comes to this.
It's the effort.
It's always about the effort, the attitude, the application, and the work rate, and his fitness. All the other sides of the game that you need in modern football. Years gone by, teams could carry mavericks like Ndombele because the system was set up around them. But now in modern day football, where everyone is super fit and everything else, that is not the case. Everyone has a part to play in the team. And this is why I get extremely frustrated with Ndombele, right? Because I was one. I had all the insane talent. You know, even at fucking 14, 15 stone, I was destroying people down on the Astro. You know, but I just, if only I had the fitness, who knows where it could have been. I could have even made League of Ireland. Who knows, right? And that's where I get really frustrated with someone like Ndombele, because I see it. You know, you see that natural raw talent. That guy can go and win you a game any day of the week. That guy has the ability to be able to dictate paces of the game, when to slow it down, when to fasten it up, this, that, and the other. All attributes of great midfielders that I've watched down the years. But it's the application and the attitude. Like, we've all seen the highlights of him against Burnley. Just no interest in going and trying to get that ball back. And like, your thing is, we're not asking Ndombele to do it all the time. But when it's on, go and do that. And he doesn't want to do it. At Napoli, his main impact last season was off the bench as an impact player. And at Tottenham, you cannot have an impact player off the bench on 200k a week. So if Ange Postecoglou is going to get someone like Ndombele to stay around, it has to be to start in that team. And that's what we originally bought him for. This guy could be exactly what Moussa Dembele was for us, but with more end product, if his heart was in it. He can be, you know, once he gets going, the size of the guy, big, broad shoulders, everything else, it's hard to take the ball off him. The quick feet, you know, this, that, and the other. When he gets into the final third, he sort of has that ton of vision, and he makes things happen more out of determination.
Is there any chance, Dave, though?
Like, so just, sorry, Sean, just 1 second. So if Ange Postecoglou is keeping this guy around, it has to be to start. And I would look to maybe put him in that 6, if you could. Get him on that ball and get him to be the one to start spraying them passes, forwarding it into James Maddison to unpick the locks, this, that, and the other.
In the 6?
Do you think he takes too many risks in that role, though, Dave, like as a 6? I feel like he's been better as more a number 10 or a number 8, I feel like, in my opinion.
Well, I think the number 6 role doesn't require quite the amount of running. Like, he's almost like a kind of linchpin. Everything pivots off of in the Postecoglou. It's a very specific 6. The way I understand.
But out of possession, it's different. You're looking at them to mop up behind all your attacking talent.
Correct, right? But it's not. It doesn't require you to make lung bursting runs. It requires you just sit in front of 3 or the 2 centre backs and one of the fullbacks that hangs behind. And if the other guys are doing their work rate and they're doing the press correctly, then you're going to see situations where the long ball is, is taken up as an option. It's an interesting take. I've never thought of Ndombele as someone who's a monster off the ball who can tackle people and challenge people. I mean, on the ball, it makes sense. He's got an amazing wide array of passing, but that's the first time I've ever heard anyone mention Ndombele playing in the 6.
If he had the work rate, though, Shawnee, if he had, like, you cannot play that role if you don't have the desire and the hunger to go and put your body on the line to go and win.
Do you think he's a good enough tackler? Have you seen him tackle enough?
I just feel like he's better higher up the pitch. I think because as well, what you get with Tanguy is he's, like you said earlier, Dave, he gets that tunnel vision in the final third. He often makes the right decision, either playing the right ball in behind. He's not like a Gio where he plays like an unnecessary, like, you know, outside the foot pass, you know, for no reason at all. He'll play it and like thread it through. Even look at that goal that he threaded Harry Kane through, you know, for the Liverpool goal. Like exactly that is what he'll bring. And so I feel like playing him higher up the pitch is where you get all his attributes. Even the goal he scored against Newcastle for us in that time under Nuno, the way he just sort of tricks the defender to think that he's going to hit it near post, hits it, you know, far post. Those sort of things are like I said, the otherworldly things that Tanguy does. And that's why I think you're actually better off having him higher up the pitch. Nonetheless, though, it doesn't mean he gets an excuse not to work off the ball. He still has to work off the ball and press higher up the pitch. I think what you're getting, though, is that he's allowed then to do those sort of risks. He's allowed to do those sort of X factor type things and maybe get away with it without feeling like there's going to be only 2 defenders, you know, behind him, you know, that are going to be mopping up for it. I think Bissouma is better suited for that number 6 role because we've seen him playing alongside Skip under Ryan Mason in the 4-4-2. I feel like Skip didn't exist. I thought it was like just Bissouma running the show by himself. It felt like in the midfield, which is, I think, what you need then from your 6 in this Postecoglou team is a guy that basically can, if he needed to, mop up by himself, you know, dictate, you know, from deep by himself, pick up the ball by himself, you know, break the press by himself, all those sort of things. And you need a guy that's smart on the ball, very composed on the ball, but also, you know, has that ability to turn and, you know, kind of get the ball forward as well. And I feel like Bissouma has those sort of categories. Whereas like a Tanguy, I think he sort of does, but maybe not as much the defensive end. And also with Tanguy, I actually do think he has that ability to, you know, score goals. It's just that, you know, he's not exactly applied himself enough, like you said.
And that's the thing. Look, regardless of what role he plays in the Ange Postecoglou, whether it's the 6, whether it's the 8, if it's the 6 out of possession, he's tasked to sort of clear up behind them attacking players, get that ball, transition it again. If it's in the 8, then he's going to be asked to get up and support the striker at times. He's going to be asked to get out, you know, wide and move across this, that, and the other. So regardless, he has to get fit. But if that guy could get fit and also come with the right attitude, application, and work rate, that guy could play anywhere. Honestly, he's got that great feet. He can play anywhere. But I've seen so many players fall by the wayside because the attitude, the application, the dedication is not there. You know, and sadly, that's the way his career is going. I hope that Ange Postecoglou has maybe made him realise that, and that Ndombele maybe realises that, and that he just wants to get going and wants to actually like make an impact at Tottenham Hotspur. Be interesting to see whether it happens. It's a huge gamble by Ange Postecoglou, especially if there was an offer on the table. It doesn't work out. Is that offer still going to be there? And then what are you left with? The same situation that you were left last year, that you're trying to force a loan move out somewhere else. So it is a big call by Ange. I can understand as an attacking manager why you would take that gamble, because you look at what he offers in that attacking sense. But Ange Postecoglou, you know, the biggest thing with him is work rate, always involved, in and out of possession, constantly moving. So Ndombele has a lot of work to do, but not only that, he's got a lot of work to do with the Spurs fans. If this guy thinks okay, Ange is giving him a chance, and, you know, you've got to sort of trust Ange what he wants to do. Yeah. But to the fan base, if he thinks that they're going to sit there and laud him from game one, sadly mistaken. They're going to want to see at least a half season worth of performances under a belt before they can start, you know, or doing magical things before he starts earning the fans over. And I don't want to hear any fans moaning about it either. At the end of the day, he's the one that put himself in that situation through his attitude, application, work rate, etc. So it's up to him to win the fans back on side. It's not up to us to all of a sudden just go, Aleyula and Ndombele. No, not going to happen. He has to win the fans back on side, and that's up to him. And I don't want to hear him cry about at times if things get tough either. He put himself in that situation.
I think that was I'm probably part of the hallelujah sort of crowd, but I'm very, happy clappy, and I'm just, trying to get back on the Tongi train whenever I get the chance. Like I said, he's like a hot ex that I just can't not stop thinking about. But Harry Kane, Dave, your potential ex, if he were to go to a Bayern Munich, because I just saw some news from Christian Falk. He's kind of, throwing out some pretty ridiculous tweets, but I think this one really takes the cake. He said Thomas Tuchel and Harry Kane are in constant contact. Both text each other so often. Tuchel had a personal meeting with Kane in the latter's house in London last month. The striker was very impressed and clearly signaled his willingness to move to Munich. Dave, what time are they texting each other? Like right when Harry Kane goes to bed? And what do you think Harry Kane served him up in his London home?
Well, he's definitely not texting him good night, because that's my role in the friendship. But look, Jack, I don't know whether to believe it or not. One thing I will say is this sort of carry-on does happen in football all the time. You're not allowed, you're not supposed to meet other opposition managers or be tapped up, this, that, and the other. But realistically, happens all the time. It's always happened, whether this meeting is set up in the kit man's house and, the manager and
the golf club
have a meeting there, whatever else. I've heard of that before, this, that, and the other. Like, there are. So, I mean, I think Sir Alex Ferguson used to conduct a lot of his business at his kit man's house, where he used to get the players to go to his kit man's house. He'd arrive at the kit man's house, and then all of a sudden the discussion takes place.
Oh, what are you doing there?
Yeah, for Sir Alex Ferguson is sort of famous for it. So, I mean, this sort of stuff does go on all the time. I'll be surprised if Harry Kane sort of said, dead cert, yeah, I'm moving, not really knowing whether Daniel Levy's going to let him move or not. Look, what I will say is that all the rumours so far this summer have been driven from the opposition side. Every single one of them, from the United side, from Real Madrid side, and all these reports coming out are all from the Bayern Munich side as well. So for me, look, I would say until I sort of hear something from Harry Kane himself, I'm choosing not to believe it. Plus, I don't think the club's going to sell out anyway until the valuation is met. So, if they didn't sell to Man City for a certain fee, Real Madrid didn't think that he was worth a certain amount, Man United, etc., I don't see Bayern stumping it up. So until they stump it up, less of the paper talk, and deliver the paper.
Did Thomas Tuchel finish his plate, do you think, Sean, at Harry Kane's house? Did he finish his dinner? Do you think, did he, lick it clean?
I don't think it happened, but I don't know how to think about Christian Falk. Like he was right about a couple of things, mate. He's been like, usually I'd be like, oh, he's just a very popular clickbait merchant. He's the Sammy Mockbell of German football, But he's been right about a couple of things. He was first on Kim Min-jae to Bayern. He was first on something else I forget off the top of my mind, but like this summer he's been right more than he's been wrong, and he's been early.
Yeah,
Nagelsmann, that's it, correct. Nagelsmann, yeah, correct, yeah, that's it. So I feel like I don't know. I feel I don't know where to go with it. I really hope he hasn't been at Harry Kane's house. Not before Dave.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
upset me.
I don't mind who goes there after, but let Dave go there first. Come on, you know, and the barber, a little trifecta exactly. For a barbecue. No, for me, I feel like
is it like a huge violation if Harry Kane actually did that in your eyes? Like if he's flirting that much, you know, with Tommy Tuchel, and also like if he's doing this, Sean, when he gets back from his vacation, do you think then first thing he has to do is just tell the club and Ange, like, listen, just I'm not in it. Yeah,
100%. Like, a lot of people are posing the question, like, you know, at what point does it become disrespectful to not show your cards? And I'll make the argument that he did show his cards once before, and he got absolutely crucified for it, right? When he went through Gary Neville and Sky Sports. This time around, people want him to show his cards, but what they really mean is they want him to distance himself from the rumors. Right, they don't want him to come out and say, I want to go, because he did that before and it didn't work out. So probably under counsel this time around, he's been told to keep his cards close to his chest. And I think the longer that we don't hear anything regarding his plans is a surer sign that he actually does want out. Now, the only defense is that, you know, he hasn't met with Ange yet. He's just finished his international duty. I think his holiday will finish maybe at the end of this week. So if it's Monday that he's back at work, you'd hope that by the end of next week, there will have been a conversation with Ange and a conversation with Daniel Levy, and we'll know where we are. If we are, you know, by the middle of July, let's say the 18th or the 20th of July, something like that, if we still have no indication of where we're at as a fan base, then I think you have to, at that point, recognize that he said he wants out, because we've run out of reasons to say that there hasn't been a conversation yet. You know, if Ange Postecoglou has had the ability to convince Vicario to the point where Vicario mentions, how often does a player who signs go out of their way to talk about the specifics of a conversation with the coach that was the kind of underlying factor? Yeah, Maddison said it, and Vicario has said it, right? So obviously Ange is like an absolute typical Antipodean who is just a lovely person to talk to. I've lived in Australia. I know what they mean when they say typical Antipodean, right? They're just people that are like really cool guys, likable, that can sell you on a project, sell you on something, and you get right behind it. I'd love to see what Harry Kane's reaction is to Ange's interview or Ange's meeting. But if we don't hear anything within a week and a half, 2 weeks, then you have to assume, in my opinion, that means that the conversation wasn't strong enough, that Harry Kane wants out, and that he just hasn't said it openly, because the last time he did it in an open forum, it went down like a shit sandwich.
The thing is, I think you're absolutely spot on about Harry Kane playing these sort of cards close to his chest, right? Because, as well, I think one thing that gets overlooked in a lot of this, Harry Kane has always said he'd rather stay at Tottenham and win trophies, right? Now, obviously, over the last few years, that sort of opportunity hasn't been there, whereas it was before. I reckon, you know, and a lot of people, again, like you were saying, want him to come out and sort of clarify the situation. If you're Harry Kane, and even if you do want to stay at Tottenham, you ain't coming out and signing a new contract now. You're going to wait towards the end of the window to make sure that, you know, the squad is in a good place to be able to go and help you challenge for that trophy. You know, you're not going to sign now off the back of James Maddison. James Maddison might turn his head a little. Ange Postecoglou might turn his head a little. I think Ange Postecoglou will offer him the keys to Tottenham, captaincy, etc., you know, in order for Harry Kane to stay committed. But, you know, Harry Kane's not stupid. He's a footballer. He knows that back line ain't good enough. He ain't signing anywhere near on the dotted line until that's sorted out. You know, so for me, until he sort of knows what squad he's looking at, he ain't going to make that determination whether to stay at Tottenham or not. You know, now I think, look, he's probably still in the mindset that maybe he does want to look elsewhere. Maybe, I'm just saying maybe, and that maybe he's still in that mindset. But at the end of the day, it was always on Tottenham to convince this guy to stay. And not only is it got down to the manager, but it's also down to the squad. Harry Kane has sat there and he's believed Jose Mourinho, has believed Antonio Conte. But the squad behind him hasn't matched his level. It hasn't matched it. So Harry Kane is now at the point, okay, it's not just about what the manager says to me. Show me with the playing squad. And I think if you can turn that around enough and Harry Kane looks around and goes, okay, James Maddison provided with me goals, which means I can get back to what I'm best at, scoring goals. I don't need to be the creator all the time now. You know, Son, Kulu, good midfield, good defense. Vicario, good passing range, good goalkeeper. Do you know what? I'll stay here and I'll give this an opportunity because I believe in the Ange Postecoglou project. So for me, there's still time in this for Tottenham to do it right. But it's got to be done in the transfer window with signings.
There are a few players that we've mentioned that also have kind of been under defensive managers only, like in their time at Spurs. I would say Brian Hill is like a good example of like a guy that we all know was meant for like a very attacking system and has only been around for very defensive managers. And Harry Kane has been quite successful and quite good under very defensive managers in counterattacking football. But if he does prefer what, you know, the style and brand that Ange is going to give, then he should stick around. But I think you and I have been firm on this, Dave. Like, we should keep Harry Kane if he is willing to be convinced to sign a new deal at some stage. I don't think he needs to sign it tomorrow, or I don't think he needs to sign it after the Ange meeting or anything like that. But I agree with Sean. I think we need to get positive sort of feedback, though, kind of from the press or from Ange or something that does sort of show that, yeah, like he's not, you know, that, you know, linked, or his head isn't that turned. Like, he is, you know, willing to give Spurs that chance if things do go well. And then I'd be happy to keep Harry Kane because we already have so much to do this summer. There's so many things on the to-do list. To sell Harry Kane, yes, it gives you a lot of money, but you also then have to add fixing, you know, the loss of him to your to-do list, which only makes your to-do list, I think, even bigger and even longer. And you're probably not going to get the original things that you wanted to get done, like the center backs, midfield, fullbacks, like Sean mentioned, etc. So it'll be interesting. At the end of the day, though, if Harry Kane was serving bratwursts and, you know, giving him, you know, kind of sauerkraut and things like that to Tommy Tuchel, I think that's a gross violation. And honestly, it's very inappropriate from Harry Kane. I hope he at least served him, you know, a good English breakfast or something like that. You know, nothing German. I hope they weren't, you know, cheering over any German beer or anything like that, because that would be just honestly just inappropriate.
What I will say is, from my understanding, there was already sort of a meeting that took place. I think it was more so over the phone between Ange Postecoglou and Harry Kane. But what we're waiting for is an actual face-to-face meeting. Okay, Kane, I want to keep you. I want to make you captain where you are. Where are you sort of at? This is my plans, this, that, and the other. And I would hazard a guess that if Harry Kane made it clear on that phone call with Ange Postecoglou that he wanted out of Tottenham at all costs, I think Tottenham would have entertained a bid by now. We haven't had any reports about that Harry Kane has handed in a transfer request, this, that, and the other either. So that's why right now, until I see something like that, for me, it's all paper talk coming from the buying clubs that want to try and get him out of Tottenham Hotspur. And it makes sense for them to put that sort of stuff out there in the media because they're the ones that are trying to tempt them over at all costs. So, and you know, I think Ange Postecoglou, I think he's due a press conference Monday. So we'll know a lot more on NDOMBELE'S situation. I think we'll certainly know a lot more on Harry Kane's situation. But until I see rumours or until I see reports from credible Spurs journalists that he's handed in a transfer request or he's gone upstairs and he's asked to leave, I would take the fact that Ange Postecoglou and Harry Kane have already had a phone call, Tottenham haven't entertained any bids. I think they're under the illusion that there's also time for them to be able to persuade Harry Kane to stay.
Shawnee?
What do you think of that, Shawnee?
I agree, mate. I agree. Everything you say makes absolute sense. For me, whilst I think that, yes, the German media are pushing the narrative because just like all the mainstream media in every country wants the best players to be playing for the best clubs. You know how I feel about this argument around like Harry Kane's legacy is incomplete. He won't be remembered as a good enough player unless he goes to a team that's like far better than everyone else beneath him. He can't win a trophy at Tottenham. So the only way he can do it is by going and playing with better players against weaker players. And then when he wins that trophy, that then somehow makes him a better player that's more memorable. Like, the logic behind it doesn't make any sense. The reality of it is just, it is logical. The reality is sensical because the media push the narrative. But that is a way of keeping the haves always having and the have-nots never having. Because as soon as a team that is lower down finds a good player, they are immediately forced to sell that player at some point, and then the player, the team that they go to gets the benefit of it. You know, we can talk about it all day long. For me personally, whilst I agree with everything you're saying, Dave, at the end of the day, if Harry Kane wanted to stay, he could snuff the argument in a second. He could say, I want Tottenham. I will sign with Tottenham. He could go out and say, not what he did with Gary Neville, but he came out and say, I do want to be at Tottenham. I just need Tottenham to do what I need them to do. If Tottenham go and have a summer of intent,
would even help,
something like that. The fact that Harry Kane is under the counsel of Charlie Kane, I get it. Loyalty is nice, family loyalty, nepotism. I get all that stuff, but to me, the direction and the kind of press management system has never been something that you look on with Harry Kane with a green tick or a. You don't want to really shine a light on it because it exposes more inadequacies than competence. But for me personally, I think that Harry Kane could end this confusion, end this speculation in a second if he said one thing or the other. But I think the silence speaks volumes, unfortunately, because of what happened 2 years ago. He doesn't want to go down that path again. Tottenham fans want him to say how he feels, but what they really mean is they want him to say, I want to stay, I'm going to stay. And if he didn't, if he said the opposite, then he would be thrown under the bus. And that is the reason why Harry Kane hasn't said anything, is because I think he probably wants to leave.
And you know what? I hear you on that. I think, look, as fans, we want him to do that, right? We, like me especially, I mean, I just want to know that my baby's staying so I can sit there and cradle him and cuddle him and, you know, run my hand through his hair and maybe, you know, a bit of mousse with it just to maybe soften it up and everything else a little. But look, when it comes to shampoo. He'd be looking like Johnny Bravo when I'm finished with him.
Sean knows his stuff. That's a good thing to have around. Sean knows his stuff.
Oh, my hair.
But the thing is, right, is like if you're Harry Kane, you're not going to come out and do that because it takes the pressure off Tottenham Hotspur to actually act in the market in an appropriate manner. As soon as Harry Kane comes and does that, Bayern Munich start to look elsewhere. Real Madrid start to look elsewhere at other targets because it's so Harry Kane is never going to do that because it takes the pressure off Tottenham. And then all of a sudden, Daniel Levy will know, like, you know, boardroom politics and in-house politics, it's completely different. And, you know, Harry Kane has already come out and spoke about Daniel Levy letting him down on a gentleman's agreement before, this, that, and the other. So on Harry Kane's side, he's never, ever, ever going to come out and say that because if he does,
it's a tightrope. It's a tightrope. If you go one side, you're letting your fans down and you're risking your own reputation. If you go the other side, you're giving Daniel Levy a chance to take advantage of you and your loyalty. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Anyway, we all hope he stays. So let's wait and see what happens.
I'll say, just quickly before we do move on, I would make the argument that if there is any managerial philosophy, any managerial tactic, if the Celtic version of Postecoglou is to be replicated 100%, then if there's any philosophy, any tactic that's out there where the massive impact of losing Harry Kane is minimized as much as possible, not to say it won't be lost or minimized at all, but where the role that Harry Kane plays at Tottenham would be less impacted by him moving, then it would be under the Postecoglou system. Kyogo Furuhashi, whilst he scored 34 goals, was not the build-up creator-in-chief. He was the guy who got on the end of the moves, and he was the guy that actually was a sacrificial lamb that pulled players out of position left and right to make room for other people. So if there is a manager whose tactics would benefit the absence of Harry Kane more than anyone else, it's probably Postecoglou.
It's not as centered like Conte or Jose Mourinho's was. Like Jose Mourinho and Conte was very much centered around like a star striker that could do everything. Like he had.
That's
Lukaku,
not to say that you're going to ever replace Harry Kane.
No.
I disagree slightly because, I mean, at Celtic, he did get rid of Giakoumakis, or whatever you call him, the Greek guy, Cypriot guy, and brought in Furuhashi to suit his system. And he brought in, he's much better than what Giakoumakis ever was. So I disagree on that slightly. I do think he needs a good goal scorer in order to enhance his system. And that's the difference between him winning and him maybe only sort of treading water, in my opinion, because Furuhashi came in and he scored more than what Giakoumakis ever did for Celtic. And he's a complete different sort of player. I would say, I think, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. I just think
Furuhashi wasn't the build-up. It wasn't the center of the build-up. Like he would play that kind of sacrificial lamb, pull people out of position, and then get on the end of the move. Whereas Harry Kane at Tottenham, if you're asking Harry Kane to do that, to be the diversion, then are you really using Harry Kane to his full potential? I don't know.
Well, you're just asking Harry Kane to score goals. You know, that's all you're asking him to do. And look, any manager is going to want to bring Harry Kane in to score goals. I mean, many people said he wouldn't fit a Man City system, but Pep Guardiola went after him. You know, Real Madrid are, were interested in Man United. The reality is, any manager will want to work with Harry Kane because there's a difference getting the ball in the box and Harry Kane finishing it than there is Richarlison. Harry Kane is just fat. He scores double the amount than Richarlison, and that's where the difference comes in.
But yes, I'm not saying that you're.
But in terms of goals and outputs, goals is what wins you games. And at the end of the day, Harry Kane is better.
I'm not suggesting that losing Harry Kane has no impact. I'm just saying that what's asked of the number 9 in the Postecoglou system is slightly less dependent on that person being involved in the creativity leading up to the ball, leading up to the goal. So I think that you could, if you asked, if let's say Harry Kane left, how are you going to replace the 30 goals? Well, it's going to be tough, right? But I think you might have maybe 12 of them, 15 of them in Maddison's ability to find the pathway using the locksmith to bring in Sonny, to bring in Decky. You're going to ask for more from the players around, like what Brighton do. With Richarlison playing the 9 with the work rate, doing what he is asked to do in the 9 role, you're not going to get the same necessarily. Of course, you're never going to be able to replace Harry Kane's goals. However, my point is, I feel like the impact of Harry Kane going is lesser felt in a Postecoglou system than it is in a Conte system.
Yeah, I hear that.
We need to find.
I disagree, but I hear it.
I think all we need to do to solve this would solve all of our questions. We need to find Harry Kane's barber, because this guy would know where, he's headed. He would know where he wants to play, what sort of system he wants. Because what is Harry Kane chatting about? Unless he's just talking about NFL and golf like the whole time, like with his barber. Surely like a few things about Tottenham, leak out. And I bet we just need to find that barber, Dave. Harry Kane's not going to tell us, so we just need to find his barber.
Yeah, I'm going to set up a Twitter account called Harry Kane's Barber. You're going to find it, and I'm going to sort of dial in and pretend like I am that guy. And I'm going to feed you some information that says, yeah, listen, if I'm entirely honest, Harry Kane realizes as well that he's not as necessary in a possible
random green check marks and stuff like that. Exactly. I love it. Shawnee, thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate it, guys.
Anything that people should look forward to that's coming out on Spurs Talk Show, my friend?
No, not really. No, just more of the same stuff I always do. Daily walks with Bugsy and the occasional pop-up live stream here and there. But yeah, usual stuff. But thank you for having me, guys. I really enjoy it. I always enjoy spending time with you.
Get over there, smash it. If you don't know, get over there and smash the subscriber link on Shawnee's channel. He's absolutely killing it at the minute. It's insane. So you want to follow that progress. Make sure you get across the Spurs Talk Show and hit that subscribe button and maybe the notification button as well if you want the daily uploads straight away and you can watch them before anybody else.
Sean, you're free from the elevator.
Thanks, boys and girls in the comments. Thanks, boys in the panel. Love you guys. I'll see you soon. Take care.
You're Sean.
See ya.
See you,
See everybody.